Okay, so to start with, we're doing another common denominator question. I'm going to use the dice of destiny to ask for, like, what do I do now? I don't expect you to be done with the question. And if you don't know, I will help you through it. So, dice have chosen, ooh, this happens rarely. Mr. Breen, you have been chosen by the dice. Now, I say that because technically I called on that spot, but you're the closest to it, and that spot is 1-1. Do you guys know what the probability of rolling a 1 and a 1 is on 2 dice? We're going to have a whole unit on probability later. Does anybody know the probability of that? How about this? Would you agree the probability of rolling a 1 on a die is 1 in 6? The probability of rolling the other one is 1 in 6. And then you multiply them, so it's 1 in 36. All right, anyway, Mr. Breen, can you tell me what to do to get a common denominator? Maybe you don't know. All right, I'll help you. You're going to multiply here and here. And it always works. If you had like 1 over 5 plus 1 over 6, you don't have to think too hard. You could just use 30 as a common denominator. Why? Because it's this and this multiplied. So if I was doing 1/5 and 1/6, I would multiply by 6 and 6. And on this other one, I'd multiply by 5 and 5. So you're really just multiplying by the other denominator. See, now they have a denominator of 30. Does that make sense? So then tell me, on the left side, what do you think I should multiply by? Yep. And I'm only doing this because I suspect that a lot of kids were not sure how to do this. All right, next up, dice. I should call on row 6. Second person. So that's going to be Quinn. What do I multiply by here and here? Yep, x minus 1. You're multiplying by the other denominator. All right, now, the denominator is done. The cake has been baked. You don't have to actually multiply those out. Because if you did, you just have to factor it again at the end. So why would you want to multiply it all the way out to have to just go back and factor? All right. Now on the top, thankfully I have a 1 here, so that makes it really easy. That's just x plus 1. This next part, tricky. I'm warning you. Row 4, person 3 today. That's Adra, that's you. Tell me what to do for this part right here, Adra.
Do you multiply the x?
Yes.
Times the x minus 1?
Okay, so what do you think I should put right here?
X squared.
You're so close.
Oh, 2x.
Nope. It was x squared, but there's something missing.
Yeah, x squared and then minus 1x.
Oh, so close. You're screwing up the negative. I'm going to help you with this. This minus right here, I'm going to put it right here to help you realize that's on the x. Now what do you think this makes when you multiply it?
Negative x
Negative x
squared.
squared. I did warn you, it was tricky. I guarantee you there's people changing their answers right now. So don't feel bad. And how about the other part?
X.
Plus x. Yeah. A lot of people will have a negative x right there. It's easy to screw up those signs. Now that you have that, I swear, if you get to this point and you haven't made mistakes, anybody can add these all together and get the answer. Like, I know you all can combine like terms. So this right here is super easy from here. This was the tricky part. How many of you didn't make any mistakes and had negative x squared plus 2x plus 1 on the top? Raise your hand if you had no mistakes and got that. Okay, that should make you feel better. 0 kids would have had that one right. See why I wanted to practice that one? And did that make me feel good that 0 kids got it right? No. But it showed me I was on the right track. Needed to practice that. So let's practice it again. We'll do another one like that. Common denominators, really big deal. All right. Since that one was too hard, I'm going to back off a notch and see if you can handle it this way, and we can get like half of you to get it right. 1 over x minus x, wait, funny looking x over x plus 1. This should be a little easier. See if we can get it up to 50 or 75% getting it right. So this chapter has a weird distinction. From last year, this was the chapter that most kids thought they were doing fine, and then they got surprised on the test. And it was like, oh crap, that was way worse than I thought. Okay? So I'll give you my evidence. So far, like earlier this hour, in the first hour, I had 0 kids asking me questions. Yesterday, I had 0 kids asking me questions. I think they were feeling like they were getting it. It was no big deal. And then the test came out worse than people thought. So don't underestimate the little stuff. You might think it's all fine, but when I just gave a problem that 0 kids got right, should tell you something. It may feel easy, but be careful. All right. Did you multiply by something on both sides? Did you multiply this side by x plus 1, the other denominator, and this side by x? And the way you know you did it right is if you look here, and they would come out the same, which they would. Now, finish it off, clean it all up, and write your final answer. Please compare with the kid next to you. Just ask him for help if you're lost. All right, that one seemed a lot easier. It's because there was no distributing happening right there. It was just negative x squared. That made it a lot easier than last time. Okay, and then there's a distributing here, but it's only a 1. So then it's x plus 1. And if I put it in the right spot, it would look like that. Raise your hand if you had this one right. Okay, now we're up to like 90% of the class. Okay. Now, did you even think about whether you could factor this? Did you even think about it? Because if you didn't even think about factoring, you lose. If you thought about factoring and went, I don't think that factors, you win. Okay. But take a second and recall how to factor out a negative 1. Please do that. The top will be different once you factor out the negative 1. And what if that makes it factorable? I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying you have to know how to factor out a negative. Maybe it's been too long. And another important thing too. Hunter, what do I get after I factor the negative 1 out of the top?
X.
Yep. Keep going.
Minus x.
Yep.
Minus 1.
Nice. Now that you did that, now you could at least look at it and go, could I factor that? Well, here's the rules. I have to use an x and an x to make an x squared, right? Ends in a minus, so it has to be a plus and a minus. And then it's a 1, so it has to be a 1 and a 1. That would have to be the answer. Does it actually work? No, it does not. But it's actually pretty close to working. It just doesn't quite work. The reason I know it doesn't work is because that times that and that times that does not make negative x. All right, so moral of the story, you need to factor out a negative in front if you can, because then that might make it factor. All right, so there's a little review of some old stuff from a couple days ago. Now this is just supposed to be super easy. would you please simplify that down? It is so commonly missed that I put something like it on the silver 20. Because a fraction divided by a fraction must be innately confusing to people. Because it's very commonly messed up. Cooper, it's you this time. I'm going to scribble this out because I don't want to divide by that. Instead, I should times by what? X over x plus 1. Nice. Now, x times x is x squared. And on the bottom, if you multiplied it out, you lose. Because at the end, you have to factor it. And if you can factor it, you should. So there, it's all factored out. And there's my answer. Any last questions? All right. So there's a review of like the first couple days of this unit. Now, during that time, I was starting to tell you, hey, notice that x can't equal 1 and x can't equal negative 1. And I taught you yesterday that you can call that the domain and that you got to say all reals but, and that's how you would write the domain. Does that ring a bell? You remember that from yesterday? Okay. Then I was starting to tell you that these guys, these two things that you say x can't be, they are either wholes or vertical asymptotes. Now, yesterday we mostly focused on wholes. Is either one of them a whole? Talk to the kid next to you. Do you think either one of those is a whole? Is either one of those a whole? Hadley, what do you say?
No, because
There's nothing on top that will cancel. Good. You can't cancel either of these two with anything from the top. Very good. So if they're not wholes, what are they? Asymptotes. Yes, they're asymptotes, and they're technically vertical asymptotes. So here's the abbreviation for that. I'm big into saving time, and I'm not sure that some of you can even spell asymptote, and I don't blame you. It's fine. Call it a VA. So everybody write VA, and then here's how you write the vertical asymptotes. You just change them to equal signs. And I want to show you what that looks like then. So write that down. These are the vertical asymptotes. There isn't any holes because nothing canceled on the top and bottom. And if you had to graph this thing, which is actually a reasonable, like, yeah, we could ask you to graph that on the test on Friday of next week. Then you would start with these two asymptotes. So do you get x equals 1? Runs like that. And x equals negative 1? Runs like that. That's how you'd start your graph, by putting those two asymptotes. And then it's all about finding some points. I'm going to recopy that equation I'm supposed to be graphing here. X squared on top over x minus 1 and x plus 1. Now, I am a math teacher. I have no idea how this graph would look. I know there's going to be dots. I know that I'm going to connect the dots. But honestly, it might do this. It might do this. It might do that. I'm not sure. But it looks something like that. It might be instead this way. And it might be here. And it might be there. I don't know. So I taught you something at the beginning of the year that should allow you to figure out where this graph goes. Because I said, even if you don't know where it goes, you can always do this. Please talk to the kid next to you about what you think I'm going to say. How can you always get the graph? XY chart is the correct answer. So I'm not going to torture you with finding like 35 points here, but let's literally just explore maybe 2 or 3. So make an XY chart. You will have a couple graphs. You had a couple graphs yesterday. You have a couple graphs today, and they just get harder and harder. Eventually you have to graph stuff like this on your test. So try sticking in 1, and you will realize, oh crap, the bottom turned into 0. Because it's a vertical asymptote. So that's what I do when I realize the thing that the 1 didn't really work. And then of course, what else is not going to work? -1. That's also a vertical asymptote. But I put them on my list because it reminds me things near that would be good to put in. Like what's in between those two? 0. So I'd put in 0 and I'd see what point I get. Take a second. Shouldn't take you too long to stick 0 into all the x's. But all that really matters is that the top is 0. If you've never processed this, 0 divided by anything, it doesn't matter what the bottom is. 0 on the top just means, oh, 0. So it will go through the point 0, 0. There's one of my points. Now, to get good at this, we're going to be doing these next week. So I'm not going to go through the nitty-gritty of this. It would take too long. Too much of your work time would get eaten up by this today. But I would put in things like, what's between 0 and this asymptote right there? Well, there's nothing nice in there, but I could put in a 1/2, and that's what you'd have to do. And you'd put in a 1/2 here, and here, and here, and you'd get a point. And if you realize that that point was positive, and then you do it over here at -1/2 and you get a -1, then you'll go, oh, there's where the graph's going. Actually, let's do it in green. And it'll probably look something like that. Get my point? You find some points. And then what if I found a point here, and a point here, and a point here, and a point here, and a here, and here, and then you'll go, oh yeah, it's definitely doing this. And you just find points, connect the dots. All right, so that's about the end of today's homework. A typical problem in the middle of today's homework looks like this. Everybody please write this down. X plus 1 over x plus 3 and an x plus 1. They typically ask you for 4 things today, not all at the same time. They'll ask you about domain, they'll ask you about holes, they'll ask you about vertical asymptotes, and then they'll ask you on some of the problems to graph it. And to graph it really means you got to find all of those things. You got to find holes, got to find the asymptotes, and then you got to find a few more points. All right, so let's just do them one at a time. What's a domain? Take a second. Taught it to you yesterday. Should be able to fire off the... What comes next? Cooper, remember? After the D? The double R. The double bar R. Do. Nobody's ever going to ask you to name that thing. That's all real numbers. Wes, what's one thing x cannot equal? How about the other one? Nice. What have I told you about these things? They're either this or this. Holes or vertical asymptotes. Good. Is either one of them a hole? Yes. Because that one will cancel that one. That makes that one a hole. But you can't just write hole above it. You got to tell me where the hole is. What comma what? That's going to be one that people forgot. Not everybody, but some of you will remember this. Would you please find the exact placement of the hole? Is it at 3, 1/3? Take a second. Figure out where the hole is and talk to the kid next to you about that one. All right, so you're saying -1 is the x and that I should put it in. But one of the critical things I skipped was I never simplified this. Can you tell me what that simplifies to? Y equals what?
1 over x plus 3.
There's 2 kinds of kids. Kids that have that written like I just wrote it and kids that don't. I want to know. Did you write that? Raise your hand if you wrote that. Awesome. You have a very good chance of doing well on this part of the test. Because, see, that's the most common mistake, is if you don't write this, then you're probably going to screw up the whole. Because from here, the whole is easy. Carlos, where do I put that -1? Yeah, it's right there. And you have a nice clean y equals -1 over 2. -1 comma 1/2. That's where the whole would be. Who had that one right? Nice. Now, the last thing, vertical asymptote. If you know where they live, you'll know the vertical asymptote like that. These two guys, they're either holes or asymptotes. That one was the hole, so that one must be the asymptote. X equals -3. You have to write it that way. You can't say -3. It's kind of like that other chapter where you pretty much never have an answer of just a number. It's like X equals that number. Or like our hole was not -1. It was -1 comma 1/2. All right, it's there. And if I had to graph this thing, I already have two key parts of the graph. The vertical asymptote's at -3. You don't have to graph it, but if you did, you'd have that, and you'd have a point. It's like an empty point at -1 comma 1/2, and that would be like right here. There'd be a little empty spot, and then I just need a few more points, and I would bet you they go like this. And then after you find those points, you'd be like, oh, connect the dots. And then the graph isn't that hard. You just got to find a few points on an XY chart. All right, I think you've got the idea. So this is the part where we should start the homework. I want to give you plenty of time to work today. I am going to cross off several of them. So get it open, and then I'll tell you which ones to cross off. You can start if you've already got it open. Problems 1, 2, and 3 are fair game. You're going to do those. All right. Without further ado, we're going to do number 1, but here's the ones to skip. Maybe you just go through and cross them off. I'm going to write them here. We're going to skip problems 7 and 8 and 13 and 14. I think that given that you have a lot of time to work today, and the first few problems are super quick, I think this shouldn't be too bad. All right, let's start with number 1. Mr. French, would you read me number 1?
F of x equals 4x over x plus 2.
X what?
X plus 2.
Plus 2, okay. And what do they exactly want?
Find the vertical asymptote and the domain.
Vertical asymptote, domain. I usually do my domain first, so I will. Big R, except x cannot be what? -2. Remember, you don't care about making the top 0. So only the bottom. All right, good. That then is either a hole or it's an asymptote. Is it a hole? No, so there must be the asymptote. X equals -2. It reminds me of the axis of symmetry. They run up and down just like an axis of symmetry does, and they look like x equals, kind of like the axis of symmetry does. All right, well, that's pretty easy. And I think you'll find that the first few are pretty easy. Some key pro tips. If you can factor it, you should. Look for things to cancel. When they do cancel, you just made a hole, right? And simplify, after you canceled stuff, simplify that. That's the thing I see kids messing up the most, is they don't, after they went through and canceled stuff, they don't write down what's left. Simplify your answer. All right, so we're going to do 1, 2, skip a few, and then do problem 9 together. Go to number 9, please. Zola, would you read me number 9?
F of x equals 2x squared minus 14x over 2x minus 14.
Okay. Olivia, what's your gut on what we should start with? Oh, there's two of you, that's right. I'm going to go with Wrecker.
We factor out.
Yes. So here's a very common mistake. What'd I do wrong? I could have factored more out of the top. Mr. Breen, what could I actually have factored the top to if I wanted to do it right?
2x.
Take out the 2x. And what do I have left then?
X minus 7.
And on the bottom, what should the bottom be? 2 comes out, and then I have x minus 7. And look at that. Coincidence? I think not. That made a what? A hole. And wait, can't the 2 cancel? Yes. And you should simplify what you have left. I made a big deal about that. If you don't go through and rewrite, what is your answer now? After you canceled stuff, what is your answer now? And you probably won't get the whole right. Because you got to know what that simplified answer to this is. Because you're going to stick 7 into it to figure out the whole. 7 comma something. All right, there's my pro tips. If you want to have some extra help, please walk on up and let me help you. Remember, I gave this chapter the weird distinction of seems easy, but kids don't get great grades on this chapter. I think it's the little stuff gets them, like, oops, I forgot where the hole is on the graph, or oops, I just screwed up this negative. But it's little things, but it gets a lot of people. So don't take this for granted. Get some help.